Story is from Give Me Una, the case of the franking slicer. Back during the 90s in the UK, when you're in your final years of secondary education, or you could call it your GCSE years, the schools did something called workplace experience. This was basically where you find a job where you spend 2 weeks experiencing work after you leave school. Even then, I found it pointless for many reasons. In my case, I couldn't find a job that would accept me, so the school went looking and found one for me. To make note, I wasn't the only one the school had to help on this. Well, the school found me a placement in the office at a dedicated mechanics education school. Basically, it was a mechanics shop like any other, but where the mechanics working on your car van are students training for their mechanics qualifications. While I was there, I wasn't allowed to do much. Like they didn't want me there at all, so I was given menial tasks. Deliver documents to offices next door, fetch coffee, use the franking machine, and other stuff. It was like they just volunteered me to do stuff they didn't want me to do. However, when it came down to it, it was mostly simple, easy jobs. Apart from fetching coffee from the staff kitchen. They had this little room which was called the mail room. It wasn't big. I could stand in the middle of the room and touch all 4 walls. There was a desk attached to the wall and a shelf above it with a bunch of mailing bags. The usual stuff you'd find in a mail room of an office. In this case, there was franking machine in the middle of the desk with 2 baskets to one side used for placing mail ready for franking. One for first-class postage and the other for second class. For those not in the know as to what a franking machine is, you'd have better luck looking them up, but I'll give you the footnote. When you get mail and you see in the top right printed markings instead of a postage stamp, that is where the franking machine comes in. Businesses can go to Royal Mail and bulk buy postage or whatever. I'm not exactly sure how it works. The franking machines print those postage details onto the envelopes instead of a person going through the hassle of removing postage stamps from the stamp books and making sure to stick it in the correct place on the envelope. With the machine, the job is done quickly. So down to the malicious compliance. As you have figured out, this compliance was with the franking machine. I was taught how to use the machine. It was already pre-programmed with what to print. All I had to do was select whether to print first or second class postage. Then I would slot an envelope into one side, like I was swiping a bank card to pay for groceries. After the envelope enters the machine by a certain amount, the machine activates and pulls the envelope through. I soon found out that this machine had a temper. Sometimes it would take its time pulling the envelopes through, other times it'd yank the envelope out of your hand and shoot it against the wall. Surprisingly, with an intact, properly printed frank mark. One day I was told, "Go do the mail," and so I did. I slotted an envelope into the machine, and it did its usual. However, with one new result. It had sliced open the envelope. As in, you can remove the letters, etc., from inside the envelope like someone had just opened their mail with one of those letter opener knives. I grabbed the envelope and went to my boss. The following conversation isn't exact, but you get the idea. "Boss, what do you want? Surely you haven't finished with the mail already?" Me? "No, I've barely started." Boss, "Then go and finish it." Me? "I can't. There's a problem with the franking machine." Boss, "There's always a problem with it. Just go back and finish posting the mail." Me? "But it's slicing the envelopes open." I tried to show her the sliced envelope. Boss, ignoring the envelope, she said, "Just frank the mail, will you? Or is that too difficult of a job for someone learning how businesses work?" Me? "Okay, but it's not my fault if something bad happens." I turned and returned to the mailroom. Along the way, I grabbed some paper and wrote on it that I apologize for the damaged envelopes, that the machine was slicing them open, and that my boss refused to listen to me about it. Then I proceeded to put envelope after envelope through the machine. Everyone came out sliced open. I must have done a couple of hundreds of them for first class alone. Once done, I didn't put them in mail bags. I just neatly piled them at the side of the machine with the letter on top. About half an hour before the end of my shift, Someone came into the office carrying several of the envelopes and my letter. I quickly found out that he was the boss of the business, as in the highest position. He'd apparently stepped into the mailroom with a few of his own letters for franking and found the pile. After arguing with my boss, and me being blamed for it like I was snooping into every envelope to see what I could find, so I volunteered to show what was happening. My boss and her boss grudgingly accepted my offer, so I grabbed a sheet of plain paper from the nearest fax machine and a fresh envelope. Putting the paper in the envelope, I asked Big Boss to seal it as confirmation that it's sealed. I then led them both to the mailroom. At arm's length, so they can both watch me, I gently slotted it into the machine until the machine took over. Sure enough, the machine coughed out a freshly sliced envelope. Then my boss tried telling me off for not telling her, only for me to say that I tried, but she refused to listen. I only did what I was told. I was let off in the end. The next day, the machine was unplugged, so nothing was getting posted. The day after that, there was a couple of piles of postage stamp books, which of course I had to stick on the envelopes. When I returned for my second week there, I was shown how to use a brand new machine. This new machine was a dream. Just imagine you had spent 10 years driving the same car until it was falling apart, and then you finally upgraded to a new car that is so new, the mileage on it was still double digits. Until I left that place, I was still given menial tasks, but my boss never ignored me again. A few years after leaving school, that business closed up shop. The building then got taken over by a big brand tire company that also did MOTs, alignments, etc. It is truly a brilliantly executed malicious compliance. OP's strict adherence to his boss's dismissive orders and his clever letter of explanation exposed his boss's negligence and incompetence, which ultimately cost her reputation, and this scenario witnessed OP's sense of accountability. Story is from Big Kappa 69. We are working too fast? Okay, we will slow down for you. I recently found this sub, and I think I have a great story for it. This happened about 2 years ago. I work in construction, but more specifically, I cut concrete. A lot of people aren't familiar with my job, but all you really need to know is that I don't pour any concrete. I use big diesel and hydraulic-powered saws to cut and remove it. I work at a relatively small company, 15 employees, and we are the company to use for concrete cutting and removal in our area. I was the first employee hired at this company, and my bosses are amazing. They have been in the industry for 25 and 30 years respectively. We will call them Brad and Cody. They know what they are doing, and they still get out and work in the field, and will outwork any of our employees. We were awarded a no-bid contract at a very large facility to cut and remove a very large section of their outdoor slab because it had cracked. This was routine for us, we could do it in our sleep, but it was still a large project. The reason we were given the contract, but not held to a number, was because they wanted it done right and fast, and they knew that we were they guys to do this even though we aren't always the cheapest. The customer requested us to bring extra equipment and specialized saws just in case. Important later. The day comes that we are supposed to start, and they wanted us on site at 6:30 a.m. for a safety meeting. Brad and Cody went out while I stayed back to get my crews ready for the day before heading out to meet them. When I arrived at 8 a.m., they were still standing by their trucks just talking. I asked them how the safety meeting went, and they said that no one had shown up yet. Finally, they got there at around 9 a.m. and didn't even acknowledge that they were late. We met the guy that was in charge of the project. His name was John. John said during the safety meeting that there would always be a few people around from his company to watch us while we worked. We figured it was weird, but no big deal. We ran a routine safety meeting after, and it was time to work. We got about a third of the project completed in one day. The entire time we were working, there were no less than 25 people standing around watching us work. We kept joking with them to just set up bleachers, it would be easier to watch that way. They made us call it quits at 4 p.m. so they could go home. Right about this time, we started to figure there was something up with these guys. They didn't care that we didn't get started until late and wanted us to end early. Yet a big part of us being there was to get it done fast. Either way, we figured we would still be able to get done in about 3 days and make record time for a project of this size, all while making a fair amount of money for ourselves. The next morning, as we were getting ready to head out for the day, Brad received an email. It said, "While we can tell that X company are master operators with their machines, we feel as if they are operating in an unsafe manner by running multiple machines at once and request that they slow down to maintain safe working conditions. They also didn't try to make sure our supervisors felt that they were safe throughout the day." Brad was pissed. We were called in to get things done fast, and not once had we done a single thing that could be considered unsafe. When we got to the job that day for the safety meeting, Brad had changed from "screw these guys, they don't know anything about what we are doing," to "okay, we are too fast. We will slow it right down for them." At the safety meeting, John, same guy who sent us the email, looked at us and said, "Okay, everyone knows what we are doing. Let's get it done." He tried to end the safety meeting with that, but that's when my boss spoke up. He said, "Hold on. Since no one is man enough to tell us in person and just want to hide behind their emails, let's get this straight. We are too fast and unsafe for you." John became visibly uncomfortable and stammered out, "Well, there was a lot of people standing around and watching you yesterday, and I just felt that someone would get hurt if they decided to get closer to watch. I had set up safety cones with red danger tape strung between it and told no one to cross. We had taken proper safety precautions. If they didn't feel comfortable to have that many people watch, then don't have that many people standing, watching, and doing nothing." All Brad said was, "Okay, we will be real slow, and if someone crosses our line, we shut the site down for an hour for another safety meeting." Time for the malicious compliance we started up for the day. Something to note about our saws, tractors, and other heavy equipment is that we have the ability to turn up the idle, or in other words, we can turn up or down the speed of the motors. So instead of everything moving normally and how it should, which is fast, everything is moving at turtle speed. Brad told us all that if we ever sped up our machines that he would kick us off the job, even Cody, his business partner. I was cutting with our saw while Cody was in the excavator to remove the pieces that I cut. Brad was in the skid steer to haul the pieces to the dump truck. I would cut the concrete into a 6x6 piece, which would normally take me about 20-30 minutes. It was taking upwards of 3 hours for one piece. After I would cut, Cody in the excavator would turn his machine on, slowly turn and stop. Extend his bucket. Stop. Lower the bucket. Stop. Tilt the bucket. Stop. Pick up the piece. Stop. Turn. Stop. Drop the piece. Stop. Shut off his machine. All without idling up. Then Brad would start his machine and repeat the same process to load into the dump truck. You get the point. It was painfully slow. After the first piece was ready to be pulled out and Cody started the process, John, who was just sitting on the sideline pale-faced, crossed my line to ask if we were really serious. At that point, Brad screamed, "Shut down!" and we all stepped away for an hour for a safety meeting. John crossed the line 3 times in the first day and 8 times total throughout the project. His employees never once crossed the danger line. Effectively, John was the only one he should have been worried about in his email about getting too close and being in danger. John kept saying, "No way you guys are being serious. What happened to what you were doing yesterday? You are so much more efficient." Brad just said, "I have in writing that you felt unsafe. So for the remainder of this project, we will be operating at a safe pace." It ended up taking us 3 weeks to finish at that horribly slow pace instead of 3 or 4 days at full speed. The best part? The head of the facility came out to see what was taking us so long. We showed him the email and he agreed with what we were doing. He told us he hates John and that he's insufferable to work around. He said that the success of this project is directly tied to John's yearly bonus. He asked how much we were charging them, and we told him that per piece of equipment and truck, and saw that is one the site is being billed to them by the hour, and that John had requested that we have nearly double the amount of equipment than we actually needed or used. The facility head just laughed and said, "Fantastic, I will make sure you are paid in full. Don't go easy on us with the bill." That's how we maliciously complied our way into charging about $200,000 for a job that should have realistically only been worth about $45,000. I even got a solid $20,000 bonus because Brad and Cody are fantastic bosses and knew we made a killing on that job. Update. I felt like I wanted to clarify a couple of things after reading the comments. First, yes, John tried to get us to go back to our previous working rate, but he would only ever verbally ask. My boss kept telling him, "I need that in writing and you have a deal. Hell might even save yourself some money while you're at it." But John either never understood what he was implying or really didn't want to send an email recanting his statement, believing he would look dumb for making a mistake. Second, this was a big project, bigger than what my part in it was. That being said, with how John was with us, I would seriously doubt every other aspect of the job went smooth for him. I bet they ended up with some profit, but not nearly as much as they would have without John, meaning he still probably got a bonus, just a very small one. Third, how did they have so many people able to stand around and watch for 3 weeks and not work? Well, by the end of the third week, there was probably only 10 people watching us by then. But this was a facility that has hundreds of people working there, so for 25 people at a time to sneak out for most of a day to watch us wasn't too big of a deal for them. They usually rotated, and if we saw someone one day, then we didn't usually see them again for about a week. Also, just another little satisfying part of the story I should have included was that Cody has had a saying since the very first time I worked with him. He says, "We aren't trying to retire off of this one single job. We are treating the customer fair, but fair isn't always cheap." After the facility head gave us the go-ahead to charge what was needed and not take it easy, Cody looked at us and said, "Yep, we are retiring off of this one." Obviously, it was more of a joke, but the satisfaction I got from hearing him say that, after knowing him for 10 years to be the guy who is extra fair, will never be rivaled. It was the perfect case of flawless, malicious compliance. By following the unreasonable demand to slow down, OP and his co-worker manipulated the situation to their advantage, derailing the project and costing the client $200K more than expecting. It is lesson for people who pretend to be perfect and oversmart. Story is from compile_commit. Return to office to increase productivity? Note, this is a repost. Earlier post got removed due to rule violations. Added clarifying details at the bottom. Backstory, I was recruited by an IT MNC during COVID. My manager is extremely chill and an outstanding leader. My grandfather, manager's manager, is a stickler for rules. For the purpose of this post, I will address my manager as Sam and my grandfather as Murad. I work as infrastructure and configuration manager. Work passes through my gate first, and if I don't pass it, it doesn't go to the next team. I act as a choking point of sorts, and any dip in my productivity becomes several folds down the line. However, apart from Sam, management is blissfully unaware of this dependency. Story. When I joined, there was no office in my city. My joining was at a city over 1,100 miles away. All joining formalities were done online. Since then, I have never been to the office, except for a 2 weeks workshop, for which I was flown in by the company. 3 months ago, a new office has opened up in my city with just 14 people. My official location was transferred here to show the minimum number 15 required to open an office as per bylaws. We are an IT MNC that provides service to an automotive corporation. My work is completely remote, so I never need to go to the office. I also really enjoy WFH. The company started elective WFO last year and hybrid at the beginning of this year, but everything was mostly dependent on manager's approval. Sam is on site in a different country. He has never asked any team member to work from office. Murad, on the other hand, expects everyone to return to the office full-time. Usually, we are protected from this by Sam. Recently, Sam has transferred to a different team in the same project, and a different guy is now managing our team. Sam remains as my manager, but I no longer get to collaborate with him on my work, which is a huge bummer. The new guy is new to the company and easily swayed by Murad. Murad is originally from my city and decides to come back to his city to oversee the new office. The first thing he decides is everyone in this city should work from office. The other 14 are not affected, as they were already working from office. They work with specialized hardware that is only available at the office. The only one affected is me. I try to tell him that this will reduce my productivity. He is not convinced. I discuss my situation with Sam. He sympathizes but is not in a position to do something about it. Now, I am a tall guy with several orthopedic challenges. I need my workstation and chair of specific dimensions. At home, I have set it up over the last 3 years, but setting the same thing up at a new office is troublesome. However, I have been ordered to return to the office. QMC. On my first day at the office, 16 days ago, I talk to the building manager and present him with my workstation requirements. Each requirement mentions the corresponding OSHA violation if not adhered to. He tells me it will take 45 to 60 days to acquire my workstation up to the standards mentioned. I spend the next 2 weeks at the office relaxation zone, which has a chair on which I can be seated without hurting my back. However, it is not a work desk, so while I am at the office, I cannot work. Suddenly, everything is running really slow. Teams are sitting idly because work is stalled at my gate. There are bi-weekly deliveries across multiple milestones, about 6-12 deliveries every month. We miss 7 deliveries during that window. Murad is pissed, but has no idea why things are stalled. The new manager is also confused. This is escalated to the CEO, and he asks Sam to consult for his old project to see what went wrong. It takes Sam 30 minutes to realize that my gate is stalled. He asks me on Teams to join the call to discuss what's wrong. I am obviously not on my laptop. It takes a lot of back and forth, but eventually, Murad himself gets out of his room and searches for me. However, the office relaxation zone is on a different floor. He cannot find me and decides to have a separate call the next day. He exits the call and catches me on my mobile. The conversation goes like this. Murad, where are you? I couldn't find you in our floor. Can you please come to my room? Me? Sure. I come to his room and tell him what the issue is. Murad, why didn't you tell me this 2 weeks ago? Me? I did. I told you making me come to the office will reduce my productivity. And the workstation issue is a building manager issue. It has nothing to do with you, hence I did not inform you. My manager knows about it. I had informed Sam when I joined the company. Murad, please work from home until your workstation is ready. Next day, which was last Friday, I am WFH. The call with Sam happens before lunch. CEO joins the call as well. Sam asks me why things are stalled at my gate. Before I say anything, Murad jumps in and says that it was a minor issue and that work will be cleared fast. But CEO wants to know what's what, so I present my case. Sam agrees with me when I mention my condition. He also mentions that this was specifically mentioned in his handover to the new manager when he left the team. I am then asked to leave the call and go back to my work. After lunch, there is another call among Murad, Sam, building manager and me. Building manager informs us that it will cost the company $2,500 to set up my workstation. Since it is a non-standard workstation, it needs to be placed in its separate room. Room will be charged at $2,000 annually. It will take 30 days to get everything ready if we decide to go ahead. Murad tells me he will let me know what is decided by coming Tuesday. It's Sunday today, and I decided to write this up after I received a call from Sam in the morning. Apparently, Murad is done working in his city and will go back next week. I can continue working from home. My workstation, chair, and separate room will be ready by the end of next month, and I am welcome to work from office whenever I want. Clarifications. I will add answers to some common queries. MNC. This stands for Multinational Corporation. Quite a common acronym. Grandfather. Manager's manager is called a grandfather in my culture. The hierarchy is described like in case of a family. Great-grandfather becomes grandfather's manager and so on. We don't actually call them using these titles, but rather refer to them using the titles in conversation or mails or official documentation. For example, an official documentation about mobile bill reimbursements may say, mobile bills up to $50 is approved. Any hire will require grandfather approval. Room charge. Since there are only 15 employees, we have office space rented in a building where several small-scale companies rent. An additional room is not in the contract and will have to be rented separately. OP took a brilliant revenge through calculated compliance. Using his knowledge of OSHA requirements for work, he delayed the work so that the arrogant manager finally had to let home do work from where he wants. Managers need to understand the comfort of employees, and they should focus on outcomes not from where employees are working. OP did a wonderful job. The story is from Darth Valgarve. Boss tried to make me work after hours without clocking in. Regretted it the next day. This story is a bit of a long one and goes back to when I worked at a casino. For anyone out there that thinks it would be a great job, well, I can tell you right now, it's not as glamorous as it seems, especially when you are working in the kitchen. Now, a little backstory so you all can get the whole picture. When I started working at this location, I was young, still in college, and working 2 part-time jobs. At first, it was just okay. I had been hired on as a steward, which is just a fancy term for dishwasher, which wasn't too bad, as it had been the same job I had at the last restaurant I had worked at. However, there were a few differences. I won't go into too much detail and name all of them, just the ones that are important to this story. The first one, and the one I liked the best, was that since there were so many restaurants and the stewards were all in one department, we were shuffled around every day. One day, you would be working in the steakhouse, the next the buffet, then the Italian, the sandwich shop in the bingo hall, and so on. This meant that you were always working with other people, interacting with them, and giving a change of scenery. I was told I was odd for liking this, but my counter was that if you did end up working with someone you didn't get along with, then it would only be a while till you worked with them again. The second was that this place hated unions. Twice a year there would be a meeting that everyone had to attend, where they would make these long presentations on how evil and manipulative unions were. Also, there would be signs all along the employee hallways with anti-union propaganda. After working for the casino for some time, my boss approached me asking if I wanted to be bumped from part-time to full-time. I said yes, as the benefits were really good. Not only did I get medical and dental insurance, but I would also be getting access to their lawyers as well as a few other things. I guess it was a good thing that I did because a few months later there were some major shake-ups. I didn't know what caused it, but most everyone there hated the new changes. For one thing, the sick note policy was cancelled, meaning if you were sick, it wouldn't matter if you had a note from your doctor saying that you couldn't work. If you didn't show up, they docked you a point. This resulted in cooks and stewards coming in, vomiting on the floor and in the trash cans because they couldn't afford to lose a point as it would count against them when it came time for raises. Another thing they changed was that they were cutting the number of full-time employees. I was safe, along with everyone else who had that status, but if any of us left, that slot would not be filled. There would only be 2 full-time employees per department. Speaking of departments, that leads me to the next big change. Technically, the stewarding department would be disbanded. This meant that while our supervisors would still be there, it would be the chefs and managers of the restaurants that would be in charge of us. This also meant that we would no longer be moving around. I was sent to the steakhouse, and thankfully, I had 2 great female co-workers. In fact, we were so good that we were called AAA, as all of our names began with the letter A. As we worked there, I began to plan moving up within the casino. I knew it would be difficult, but I had a dream of buying my family's cabin from my parents and living up in the country while I finished college. Sadly, on my first attempt to becoming a supervisor failed, and I ended up training the person who did get the job. I didn't complain. I just took it as a sigh that I needed to up my game. Now, here our story really begins. See, our head chef was being transferred to the Italian restaurant and the assistant chef was taking his place, meaning we were going to hire a new guy to take his place. Let's call the new guy Kevin. When Kevin first came in, he seemed okay. Not great or awful. He was just there, and we had no real reason to talk most days as we were usually pretty busy. Then, maybe a month after Kevin started working there, I had my first real interaction with him, and it, well, was something. It was at night with the dinner rush just starting to pick up, and I told my co-workers that I was going to fill up my water bottle before it happened. They said okay, and that they would begin doing the same once I got back. But before I could leave the steakhouse to go to the break room, Kevin called out to me. Kevin, OP, where are you going? Me, just getting a drink before we get busy. I told the girls. Kevin, then why aren't you using the waitstaff drink fountain? Me, blinking and confused. We were told when we started that staff are only supposed to get drinks from the break room. Kevin, don't give me that. I see the waitstaff getting drinks there all the time. You are just going there to waste time. I'm going to have to write you up for this. Me, wasting time. The break room is just down the hall. In the time we've spent having this conversation, I could have gone down there, filled my bottle with ice, gotten my drink, and gotten back here. Kevin then opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, the head chef caught sight of us standing there and came over to see what was going on. Before I could open my mouth, Kevin spoke up, explaining the whole thing with a superior look on his face. That, however, faded when the chef spoke. Chef, Kevin, OP is right. Employees are only supposed to use the drink fountains in the break room. Si, I'm going to have to talk to the waitress supervisor about this. OP, go get your drink. I need to talk to Kevin in private. So I did. After that, I was pretty much confused by what just happened. At first, I was willing to give Kevin the benefit of the doubt, believing that he honestly didn't know about that rule. That maybe chefs and supervisors were allowed to use the waitstaff station, assuming that it applied to everyone. However, when I brought this up to my co-workers, they said similar things happened with them. That he had pulled them over for a minor infraction of the rules, and when they just said they were sorry, he let them off with a warning. So they suggested that he was just marking his territory and would have gone easier on me if I hadn't questioned his authority. It was after that, however, that I began to notice things. Firstly, the waitstaff was no longer talking with Kevin as they were pissed off at him for getting the crackdowns at their station. It was during this time that I began to realize just how often he hung out with them. He was also always calling over my co-workers, asking them to help him with a job like peeling potatoes for hours, leaving me alone. What's more, whenever I stopped to speak with one of my supervisors, who happened to be a young woman, he would yell at me to get back to work. Slowly, I began to suspect that he had other intentions. These suspicions were later confirmed during that summer. For those of you who have never been in a professional kitchen, it can get hot. And in the summer, it can get really hot, and the odors can sometimes overpower you. On this day, I was working at one of our massive sinks, scrapping off the remains of perch and giving the pans a deep clean when Kevin called me to the office. Now this was odd, as I had only ever been called to the office to get my 10-cent raises while getting a performance evaluation, and neither of those were to happen until January. Curious, I followed him to the small room where he gestured me to enter first. I did, finding a woman I had never met before sitting at one of the desks there. When I entered, she looked up from her work to give me a curious look that said, "Hello? Can I help you?" You know the look. Then Kevin spoke as he shut the door, walking in backwards as he did. "Kevin, up you stink." "Woman, excuse me?" At this, Kevin jumped before turning around. The woman was looking at him with rage while Kevin looked lost. It didn't take me long to realize that he didn't know she was in there. Kevin, sorry, I misspoke. I meant he smelled bad. We're getting complaints about his BO. Now, like I said, the room was small. So small that I felt cramped being in there with two other people. With the way we were positioned, I was pretty close to the woman who was growing more annoyed. Woman: I don't smell anything. Sir, would you mind if I get a little closer? I said it wouldn't be a problem and allowed her to get close enough to sniff me. She did it maybe 2 or 3 times before pulling away. Woman: I don't smell anything. That's when I spoke up. OP, look, if someone said I smell, then I'm sorry. But I'm working over greasy sinks full of chemicals to clean off pans with fried perch on them in a room that feels like 100 degrees. And on top of that, the aprons we are given are not the best. To emphasize my point, I gestured to my shift, which was wet and full of bits and pieces of fish. Woman: I see. I'm going to have to take a look at those and see if any need replacing. OP, how about you cool down for a bit in the break room? Kevin, you stay. We need to have a talk. After that, 3 things happened. The first was that the stewards got new aprons, which made all of us happy as they hadn't been replaced in years. Second, from then on, if Kevin wanted to talk to me about an issue, another staff member had to be there as a witness. And if there wasn't one, I was to find that woman who I learned was the steakhouse manager. Third, all bets were off between me and Kevin. While he couldn't pull me to the side like that, he did start yelling at me whenever he could in public. If he caught me standing around, like when I was waiting for the dishwasher to fill up, he would yell at me to get back to work from across the room before going back to talk to one of the girls. He would just berate me for any little thing he could, just to make me miserable. Soon, I came to realize that he saw me as an obstacle between himself and all the female staff members, as I was on good terms with all of them. I even wondered if he thought I was like a harem protagonist based on how many I worked with. For over the next year, I tried everything in my power to stop him while still trying to get that supervisor position. I went to HR, writing up complaints only for them to ask, "What do you want us to do about this?" And when I went to my head supervisor, he just said that I needed thicker skin. It seemed like every day it just got worse. On top of that, my identity was stolen twice. The first targeting my bank account, while the second one was my tax return. With the bank refusing to help and the legal department of the casino dragging their feet to help me, I was in the red for a long time, making my situation all the worse. There would be days when I would have to collect cans in the break room for gas and had to give away one of my cats. And with Kevin adding to my stress, there were days when I honestly thought about ending my life. Thankfully, there were good people still around. A bunch of my co-workers naded together to give me small packs of food, and some of the line cooks helped sneak out some meats that they were about to throw away. Then came the big night. It had been a concert night on one of the coldest nights of the year. So cold that several keys had snapped in the door locks because they had frozen shut. I had managed to get to my car and turn it on, leaving it running for a couple of minutes as I headed back to the locker room in order to enjoy my only comfort left: a book. The plan was to just read a couple of pages, and then I would be out of there. But before I could get past my first paragraph, the doors to the locker room opened and there strode in Kevin. He looked around for a moment before his eyes fell on me and a wicked smile appeared on his face. Kevin: who told you you could punch out OP? Not me, that's for sure. I just got a complaint from the night crew saying that your dishwasher is a mess. Clearly you didn't clean it at all. Now you go back there and clean it right now. And I'd better not see you punching in, or else you'll be fired. With that, he strode out of the room, laughing. For a moment, I just sat there in utter confusion, wondering if he could do that. I felt scared because, if I lost my job, then I wouldn't know what to do. I was behind on my student loans. I had to drop out of college by this point due to various reasons, behind on paying my parents' rent, and could barely afford to keep the one cat I kept who had been abandoned. For the first time in years, I felt so overwhelmed with fear that I felt like I could begin crying at any moment. Then, the moment passed, and I was furious. This guy had been doing this to me for too long. It didn't matter if he could or couldn't. I was done with this. I had to get out of there. As I stood up, I found myself making a plan fueled on by my rage. I had kept the fact that my identity had been stolen from my parents, partly out of shame and partly out of pride as I wanted to get myself out of this mess. Well, no more. I was going to tell them about it and ask if I could move back in with them. I would even ask for help looking for a new job down there. Sure, it would mean losing my dream home in the country, but at this point being stable was more important. But before I could do anything, another thought crossed my mind, making me smile. He wanted me to wash the dishwasher right now without punching back in? Okay, I'll do just that. So I left the locker room, barely hearing the security guard stationed nearby as he called out to me. No, I ignored him and everyone else as I mentally prepared myself to do this. When I got to the kitchen, there were piles of dishes, pots, pans, and a slew of other items that needed to be cleaned in quantities that are only ever seen on concert nights. But I ignored that as well as the 3 stewards who were working hard, shutting down the machine and emptying it. Night steward: "What are you doing?" OP: "Sorry, but Kevin told me that you told him that no one had cleaned the dishwasher and that it was a mess. So much so that I had to come back and clean it without punching in, or else I would be fired." The color on everyone's faces drained. When the first person managed to compose himself, he told me that none of them had seen Kevin and that the machine was perfectly cleaned when they arrived. Now, hearing this did make me feel bad, as what I was doing would put them behind. But Kevin told me to do this, so I was following it to the letter, while also making sure everyone there knew who sent me. Seeing that I wasn't going to stop, not that it mattered at this point as the machine had been drained, one of them went to get the night supervisor. While he was gone, the other 2 began to argue with each other over whether or not Kevin could order us to stay past our shifts and fire us if we refused. It didn't help that the casino had this nasty habit of offering employees a room to stay in when the roads were snowed over, only to them make them work all night as they were on call. When the night supervisor came, she asked me what was going on. I repeated my story while cleaning the machine. She said that Kevin had not spoken to her and was gone before stating that he doesn't have the power to fire me. I just told her that I really couldn't take the chance. Then I asked her how to put in my 2-week notice. That confused her even more, asking why I was doing this if I was just planning on leaving anyways. I told her that I would need time to make arrangements for my future and that getting one last paycheck was important. So, I wrote up my 2-week notice, even mentioning why I was leaving before hitting the road. When I got home, it was 3 a.m., and with all the rage now out of my system, I just crashed onto my bed with my uniform still on. The next morning, I was awoken to the sound of my phone ringing. It was the casino. The head stewarding supervisor was asking if I could come in and talk about last night. At first, I told him no, that I couldn't come in early just to come back home. However, he said it was important. Curious, I told him I would be there in an hour or 2. When I arrived, I was taken back to the steakhouse office to find it crammed with people. The night supervisor was still there. The night security officer was there. My supervisors were there. Several head chefs were there. And the steakhouse manager was there, looking like her face would erupt into flames at any moment as she stared at the one figure who was sitting. It was Kevin, hunched over in his seat looking like a child who was in time out. I was then told that they knew what happened. After I had my talk with the night supervisor, she went to security and found footage of Kevin looking out the door before heading towards the locker room and finishing off with him leaving with a grin minutes before I left the room. After that, she called in Kevin to show up the next morning. He tried to lie his way out of this, stating that it never happened, and I was just lying to get him into trouble. The supervisors then said that it was a simple matter to check, as they have the security guard that was by the room and that they can check the footage. Instantly, he remembered that he had spoken to me, only I had misheard him, and that he would never tell me to work without punching in. The night supervisor and the others in the room then asked, "Why would OP lie? Who told you that the machine needed cleaning? Why would he be the only one who needs permission to leave?" And so on. Over and over, Kevin tried to lie, only to change his story again and again, until finally he realized he had been caught. The steakhouse manager then turned to me before apologizing, asking me if I would consider staying. The head manager also apologized, asking the same. For a moment, I was going to say no. But then, I had a stupid idea. That, if I did this, then I might have a shot at becoming a supervisor myself and not have to leave. So I said sure, but only if Kevin never talks to me again. If he has a problem with what I'm doing, he'll have to run it by the head chief unless it's an emergency. They agreed. Later, I heard a few stories on why they finally acted. The first, and least likely in my opinion, was that this incident finally caused someone higher in the food chain to notice all the written complaints I had on Kevin and was demanding answers. The second was that they didn't want to lose me just yet. Remember how I said that we used to move around from area to area? Well, turns out there were now only 2 employees who knew how to work in every restaurant. Meaning, I could go into any area and know instantly where everything goes and how that area operates without wasting anyone's time. But the most likely reason was due to the union. News about what had happened the night before had spread throughout the casino faster than I ever could have imagined, and if they didn't take care of this, there was a greater chance that the union reps would seize on it. In the end, I stayed in the steakhouse longer than Kevin did as he left 2 years later. But before he did, I offered to throw a pizza party for everyone the day after he left. Update. There are plenty of questions and comments that people had, so I decided to write this up in order to answer as many of them as possible. First, the length. Did anyone read the first sentence of my post? It said right there that it would be a long one. So why complain when I told you in advance that it was long? For others who said that the first part was fluff, I wanted to paint a picture of the area I worked at, the conditions that myself and others were under, as well as some things that would have been important later. Like the potential of me being one of the few people who knew how to work in every area helped me. Second, my car. Yes, I did turn off my car. Sorry that I forgot to mention it. Third, legal issues. Some of you have asked why I didn't try to sue the casino, Kevin, or just said that I should. To be honest, I did fantasize about doing just that. However, seeing how the casino is on Native American land, any and all legal issues were brought before a council, and it was well known that any time an employee tried to go before them, the house was more likely to win. Also, given how my financial state was, I didn't believe at the time I could afford a lawyer or what would have happened if we lost. Fourth, why I stayed so long. This was something I had thought about including in my original post, but decided against doing so because of the length. The sad reality was that there were not a lot of good-paying jobs at that point in time due to a recession going on at the time. So jobs were hard to find. Now I could have tried to transfer to a different department, but remember how I talked about being a full-timer? Well, at the casino, when you transferred to a different department, you had to start from the bottom, meaning whatever raises you had gotten would have vanished. Not only that, but I would have lost my full-time status. So not only would I take a hit to my paycheck, but I would have lost my benefits like health and dental. I admit that I was too scared to go on without them for an unforeseeable amount of time. Fifth, Kevin's punishment. At the time, I was just happy to know that something was being done, even if I couldn't see it. Now, there are a few of you who said I should have asked for his job, but the problem is that that's not how it works. An assistant chef is not a position that just anyone can take, as it takes years to learn and work up to. I did not have the skills or the training to even become a line cook at the time. Sixth, the ending. Once again, sorry, as I know that it does feel unsatisfying. I know many of you were expecting something more grand. However, this is something I have learned in life, that you will rarely ever get the grand finale. Instead, I have learned to accept my victories when I get them and move forward. Sadly, I never did get to keep the cabin. While I did manage to work my way out of the identity theft issue, I never did get the supervisor job that I had been working for. In the end, I gave up when they told me the reason I didn't get the job was because, OP, you follow the rules too well. That was the final straw. Still, life has gotten 1,000 times better for me. Because I stayed in this hellhole, I was able to meet the love of my life. Shortly after that final rejection, I extended my search to find a new job. While the cabin and home I love so much is gone, I now have my own home with my wife. So in the end, I am living a comfortable life. I call that the best revenge. The revenge was perfect, and it was executed flawlessly. OP did a wonderful job by exposing the arrogant and abusive chef and ultimately getting him fired. Nasty people like Kevin deserve the same destiny. It was not OP, but Kevin himself who dug a grave for himself. Story from Sure Fine Whatever. 67? Thank you for your input, Karen. Or how I did exactly what the HR lady told me to. Hello, everyone. First, I would like to point out that I've created a new Reddit account just so that I could post this story. I didn't want to use my regular account as I would like to stay as anonymous as possible, and my post history plus this story will make that difficult. Second, just so you know, English is not my first language, so please excuse me if there are any mistakes. And lastly, this story happened earlier this year, but the real consequences came last week. That's why I've decided to share it now. The context: I, 35F, live in a big city in Western Europe. After graduating college, I was hired as an office assistant in a big company. Let's call it Happy Place. I did my last internship as a student there, and it went so well that I got hired just a few weeks after getting my master's degree. Over the next 10 years, I worked my way up from an assistant to office manager to head of one of the biggest departments. I was not paid a lot of money, but it was above average, and the benefits were great. But the main reason I stayed for so long was the people who worked there. Over the year, I've made quite a few friends there, and by the year 2020, I was one of the most experienced people working in Happy Place. My colleagues often came to me for an advice about how to do this or that, and I also had a great relationship with the big bosses. And the cherry on top was that I had the best boss someone can hope for. Let's call her Maggie. Maggie was 10 years older than me, and she was Wonder Woman. She is nice, professional, cool, helpful, and has a heart of gold. I've worked with her during my whole time at Happy Place in the last 4 years. She was my direct supervisor. I loved her. Then, in 2020, a few things happened almost at the same time, and over the course of 6 months, Happy Place turned into Sad Place. First, the company hired a new HR lady, Karen. She was the worst. She treated everyone below her level of responsibilities, which, as pretty much 99% of the staff, as if they were lesser people, talked down to everyone and constantly made changes in the HR policies. She implemented quite a few new rules which lead to us losing some of the benefits that we liked, like free lunches, paid time off to go to the doctor's office during office hours, etc. But the CEO of the company trusted her for some reason, and soon he stopped taking meeting with the staff, making Karen the only person who could make decisions regarding the staff, which meant that no one could actually complain about her, and we slowly started feeling helpless. Second, Maggie was promoted to a different field, the one she actually wanted to work in, so I cannot be mad at her for leaving, and she got replaced by Susan as my new supervisor. Susan was cool, but she was my age and with less experience, which did not make much sense. So even though on paper she was the one in charge, I was the one constantly explaining to her how things worked and what needed to be done, while she took the credit. And lastly, COVID. Our line of work was highly impacted by the pandemic, so the whole year 2020, I was working under an enormous amount of stress, taking almost no vacation time, doing my job and some of Susan's job, as at some point she went on a medical leave, and some of my co-workers' jobs, as some colleagues cracked under the tension and quit, but no one got hired to replace them. But despite all of the hard work, I did not receive any pandemic-related bonus, which was weird since some of my co-workers let it slip that they got a €1,000 bonus for achievements during the pandemic. The compliance. So given all the events of 2020, in January 2021, I've decided that enough was enough. When it was time for my annual review, I've decided that I would negotiate better conditions for myself, because as much as I loved my job and the people I've worked for, I couldn't keep working so much for so little pay. As Susan was still on a medical leave, Karen was the one who did my annual review. despite the fact that I've only met her a few times and we've never directly worked together. In preparation for the meeting, I've made a list of the things I've been putting up with and a list of reasons why I should get a slight pay bump. I was asking for a 15% pay increase, but was happy to accept a 10%. It was not about the money. It was about knowing that there was at least a chance that management valued me as an employee and that I was not just some sucker who did so much for not even a thank you. After making my case to Karen and carefully explaining to her what my job was and what I was actually doing, I asked her the dreaded question. She looked at me, smiled and said, "OP, I appreciate everything you've been doing for the company and we value you as an employee. But your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I was speechless. I admit I was so angry and hurt that I felt tears coming up to my eyes. But I took a deep breath, calmed myself and said, "Thank you for your input, Karen. But I cannot keep working in these conditions. It's not worth it." Karen rolled her eyes and replied, "Then you can quit, but I will be sorry to see you go." And quit I did. You see, there were two things Karen did not know. First, as explained, I was a highly valued employee with a great reputation and over 10 years of experience in the field. In our field, reputation is important, and for the last 2 years, I've been receiving job offers from competitors. I always refused because I loved working for Happy Place. But since the events of 2020, I started taking interviews, checking what else was out there. And just before my meeting with Karen, I did an interview with Cool Company, who offered me a 60% raise to do the same job as I did for Happy Place. Second, remember how I said I took almost no vacation days in 2020? So by January of 2021, I had over 2 months of paid leave available. I checked with the HR, not Karen, the week before my annual review, and they confirmed to me in writing that I was free to take my vacation days whenever I wanted. So I did exactly what Karen told me to do. I quit. I put in my 2 months' notice and took my 2 months' vacation, which meant that I came to work for only 1 day, to clean out my office and say goodbye, before leaving for good. I felt bad because I left so many of my colleagues in a really bad position since they now had to do my job. But they all assured me that they understood and that they would have done the same thing. After my 2 months paid vacation, I started working at Cool Company and I've been here ever since. The aftermath. I kept in touch with a few friends from Happy Place and they regularly informed me of what was going on over there. It seems that me quitting was the push that many of my co-workers needed to also make the final leap and quit. As I said, the conditions went from great to bad since Karen took office. Also, the fact that I quit so abruptly got the attention of the CEO as we had a good relationship. He asked Maggie, who was aware of the whole story with Karen, about it, and she told him the truth. About me not getting the COVID bonus, about Karen speaking down to staff members, about her telling me to quit if I wanted to. The CEO finally opened his eyes and launched an investigation into Karen's actions. He personally did interviews with some staff members and heard stories about her from people from many different departments. He also investigated the COVID bonus story, and it turns out she only gave the COVID bonus to her friends from different departments and a very generous one to herself. Plus, since I've quit, no one was actually able to do my job, and the fact that Karen was responsible for me leaving made her responsible for the consequences. So after reviewing everything, the CEO decided to terminate Karen's contract. Rumor has it the whole staff of Happy Place celebrated this joyous occasion. The cherry on top. Last week, my boss at Cool Company walked into my office and said, "OP, you know Jen from HR is retiring soon, right? We did interviews to replace her, and one of the candidates is Karen. She seems competent but asks for quite a lot of money. You and her work together, right? What's she like? Do you think she deserves to be paid more than we initially offered?" I said, "Boss, you have a few minutes? Great. Let me tell you a story." After hearing my very honest opinion of Karen, Boss Man laughed and said, "Okay, good to know. I think we will tell her that she is not the right fit for us. Thanks, OP." As soon as boss man left my office, I sent an email to my friend Laurie from HR, who was in charge of replying to candidates. I also told her the story and asked her to keep me informed if there is any development with the whole Karen applies to cool company thing. A few hours later, I got an email from Laurie. Turns out she copied me to her official reply to Karen. It read, "Dear Karen, thank you for your interest in working for Cool Company. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that in our opinion, your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much." I brought Laurie a big chocolate cookie the next day. Thank you all for reading. Have a great day, and remember, don't let Karens ruin your sense of self-worth. Update. Hey guys, thank you for all your comments and support. I have a small update I thought you might want to know. The CEO from Happy Place approached me last week to ask me to come back and work for him. He offered me more money, but didn't really apologize for what he let happen to me and the entire team. I said no, because even though Karen is no longer there, things haven't really changed. At least not for the better. Almost all of the good people from that place have left for other opportunities since my departure. Even those who have been there for 20 years. That includes my friend Maggie, who now works with me at Cool Company. I could not be happier. Judging by her LinkedIn page, Karen is still looking for work. Try to be lazy and get me to do your job. I'll let you fail. Story from Burn and Count. Do exactly and only as told. Okay. Take holiday ASAP. Okay. Check emails on holiday. Okay. But it'll cost you in the long run. A story of MC and upwards management from a decade ago. Usual caveats. Names changed, writing on mobile and English as second language. TLDR at bottom. To set the scene, recently direct employed at UK HQ for a sizable national B2B company that I'd contracted for. Me is me, your OP. Bob is my new micromanaging boss. Jim is my nice hiring manager. They guy who talked me into joining rather than continuing on contracts, only mentioned as his warning to cover my rear with Bob, made this possible. So to the story before you lose interest. Bob started our relationship with a request for one-on-one meeting to understand my role, as it was one they'd never experienced except as an end stakeholder. Seems promising, so I prepare a concise but thorough briefing presentation to outline core deliverables and resource allocations as they stood. Dear reader, I lie not. Second slide showing the period spread of legal and corporate compliance activities was up for 3 seconds when I was instructed to cease presenting and dressed down as follows. Paraphrased for expediency and clarity, as Bob had, as I later learned, a tendency to ramble on tangential lines. Bob, do you presume to instruct me, a board director, your superior in all aspects, and your direct manager on how to run my subordinates? Me? No. I presumed that you called this meeting to familiarise the key deliverables and legal requirements of a business area that was hitherto the exclusive remit of Jim. If this was a misinterpretation on my part, I apologize, and... Bob cutting me off. That's quite enough. You are here to be told what, how, and when to do your job. I'm having a mental replay of overheard break room conversations about Bob's need to control everything. Bob continuing as I settle into the at ease pose adopted by frequently disciplined grammar school boys and military recruits. I am in charge, I give the instructions, and you treat anything that could be construed as a request as a direct order. The only time I want to hear from you is for clarifications, authorizations, or to confirm that you have received, understood, and actioned my orders. My blood was rushing in my ears. The nails on both hands were close to splitting my palms, but I knew anything I said would end badly for my salary, and I'd have to play nice. Me almost gritting my teeth. Understood. May I clarify one thing, please? Bob with a look of utter contempt. What exactly was unclear from what I just said? Me reverting to a customer service developed S to eating tone. Nothing was unclear. Only you omitted to reveal how and when I am to receive orders. Bob turning crimson. Email when it hits your inbox. My PA will have minutes of this meeting ready before you've made it back to your desk. Now out, I am too senior to waste more time on this. About 6 months later, after fastidious compliance with directives issued to me, mostly via Bob's nice but very timid PA, and careful cover Maya, archiving of all commas and backups to keep us legal, and I add, all whilst discreetly exploring alternative career options both within and outside the company, I am in receipt of a meeting invitation to attend Bob's office. At last, the order came forth with opportunity for MC that started the avalanche. Bob not looking up from their monitor. OP, I need you to book 2 weeks holiday to be taken ASAP. This off-the-record request is your number one priority. Klaxons going off in my head. I'm about to be stood up to take the fall for the state our compliance submissions had fallen into. Lucky I did everything legally required of me. I'm not responsible under policy or law for the compliance, only what I am told to do. Me deciding this is my chance to goad Bob's ego. 2 weeks ASAP. Gladly, I can hand over everything by end of this week, and I did get ahead of the monthlies in case you forgot to request them, so could start with next week and the week after. Bob looking oddly relieved and making eye contact. PA will process and authorize. Those monthlies better be perfect. You are dismissed. Friday comes, and the anticipated flurry of last-minute requests and instructions come through. Amongst the laundry list was the utter gem I had hoped for. A direct email, not PA acting as, with instruction to keep company phone with me at all times and to keep regular, twice daily contact throughout the 2 weeks. No one asked what I was doing with my impromptu 2 weeks away from the office. I was fortunate to have the chance to fly 1-2 way around the world to stay with my brother, 20 mins, booking flights, no luggage or hotel costs to worry over. Remember that order to be online? Early 20-teens data costs were insane. Ad roaming, you get where this goes. I dutifully followed orders and ate roaming data like a social media-obsessed teenager. I logged hours and dutifully submitted them to payroll. I drank like a fish and had the best time with my brother. End of the month, I'm back and being a good peon with my head down and keyboard clicking when the calendar entry pings in. Seems I am to be favoured with another face-to-face. I have an idea of what is coming, but oh boy, Bob appearing to be in the middle of a meltdown. What the hell have you done? Going lowercase to save your eyes, but this was at fire alarm in your ear volume. You have caused incalculable damage to my reputation in this company. The other board and Jim were laughing at me saying, I can't control you. You're out. You're over. You're... Me interrupting in parade ground voice, standing to my full 6'4". I'm covered. Your hubris and ineptitude are laughable. If I'm out, it'll be by my choosing and with a clean sheet. Jim knows full well that I wouldn't drop the ball on compliance, regardless of you meddling in things you're not even aware of. Everything you forgot is covered except your own backside. You're not even peer-worthy, let alone superior to me, even though you may be higher ranking. Yes, I got that from a film I can't remember, but this part is crystal clear. I bid you good day. I turned 180 and walked out of the office into stunned silence across the open plan 100-seat floor and back down to my desk. The fallout. I enjoyed the inevitable HR session chaired by Jim. I promised not to use any manner that might be deemed threatening for 6 months. I was also returned to reporting to Jim, who reinstated my OT plus TIL for the time I worked on holiday and let me get back to keeping things compliant. Bob did indeed have a full meltdown soon after. My show of assertion crumbled the empire of fear. They left to enjoy early retirement and faded into memory. TLDR, new boss is a micromanager. I MC to let them fall on their own lack of knowledge and end up looking bad to their peers before assertively destroying their in-office authority, leading to end of career for them. OP executed malicious compliance perfectly, following Bob's micromanaging orders and racking up roaming costs while staying legally protected. It is lesson, though bitter, for people who try to micromanage their employees. The best part of the shattering Bob's authority, guys, very interesting story from the Lightning Count 1. You demanded my entire team be at the office for the 4th of July. Fine. Enjoy paying for the office party. So this starts on Monday, the 3rd, as I receive an email from a VP not over my department or bad VP. I am told that my team will be required on the 4th. I politely tell them no, that our team has been scheduled this day off and people already have plans. My team is the IT team, and as many of you know, IT team gets shafted every time it can get shafted by any company. So over the course of the week, I let my team know what is happening. I let them know I have been reaching out to higher-ups to fix it. I also tell them that if their plans are ruined, I will make it right at work. Over the course of 3 meetings, it starts to look like things will not go my way. In response, I send an email to the CEO of the company. All of my higher-ups know I was going to do this and said I should do this as he is very family-oriented and that he would not allow anyone to work on a national holiday. Well, he is on vacation in the Bahamas until the 6th, but his assistant informed me he would look at this after he gets back. Repeatedly slams head into desk. So I tell everyone that it will be work from home and that we will be setting my cell phone as priority in the call routing. Meaning I would get most of the calls. To be honest, I was expecting almost 0 calls, especially since I was asked to send out a notification that IT support would cover the 4th of July. I never sent that email out. A day later, I was given another outrage. I was told in an email that my employees would be required to be at the office and no one was allowed to work from home. They would be checking the door badge INs to verify we were at the office. I asked why in an email, and they said that they wanted to make sure no one was playing video games at work. We normally work from home about 2/3 of the week, and video game playing is a normal occurrence at work. So I walked into the person's office. After a very long conversation where she was losing the logic war with me, she told me that it's just IT, you guys don't have lives. No, I am not kidding you. This is exactly what they told me. I reported this to my VP who said, I will take care of this. It likely won't be until after the 4th, so get creative. I know this man well. We have worked together a long time, and get creative is code for corporate fuckery. I asked the person requiring us to be at the office if they cared if we had an office party. They said no, as long as it did not interfere with the call flow. Even suggested using my new company card to pay for it. Go wild. Pro tip, never tell me go wild. At this point, it was Tuesday the 21st. I let everyone know what's up, but that I have something planned. I asked who had things planned for that day. 2 people told me they were planning to shoot off fireworks with their family, but the rest were planning BBQs with friends. I write up an email to the VP over my department and the bad VP. I tell them all that I let everyone know. We all were expected to work until 8 p.m. Monday. Per the conversation with the bad VP, I will be having an office party as a sort of sorry to the guys and gals who got shafted by this decision. The bad VP replied again. Thank you for your understanding. Also, yes, I would expect an office party if I had to work on the 4th of July as well. So go wild and enjoy your time. Use your new company credit card if you need to cover a few expenses. Also, I should not have to remind you, or anyone else, no fireworks or alcohol on company property. So now it is time to tell you about my office. See, a while back, the IT team was moved from the main COP office and into a smaller building by itself. It has a nice gaming break room, a decent-sized gym, and a full-on drink bar. Soft drinks, mind you, no alcohol at work. Out back is a big patio that crosses county lines as soon as you cross a small creek. A creek that just so happens to have a footbridge over it leading to an empty field. I start making phone calls. Monday, June the 5th. I call up everyone into an hour-early meeting that morning. I explain to them all that I will be making it right. I asked everyone to invite their friends and family to the office. No supplies will need to be brought by anyone. I tell them all that this will be non-alcoholic, but that I will be planning something for everyone. I told them to expect all food to be provided, and they don't need to bring anything, unless they want to bring some fireworks, i.e., they won't have to spend a dime. The 4th comes, and the entire day we did absolutely no work, no tickets, no calls came in. Well, 7 calls did come in, but from the same person, the bad VP. She was calling to make sure we were manning the phones. All of us were playing video games or watching movies. 6 p.m. rolls around, and everyone was told that the food was ready. People were expecting hot dogs, hamburgers, maybe a bratwurst or two. What they got was a full-on BBQ feast with pizza and other foods. There was smoked brisket, spare ribs, smoked sausage, smoked turkey, both kinds of tater salad, coleslaw, green beans with bacon and onion, potatoes au gratin, pizza from 2 different places, excellent hamburgers, and bratwurst hot dogs. On the dessert side was cake, very good cookies, 4 different kinds of pies, and about 2 pounds of fudge. Families and friends started showing up at around 6 to 6:15-ish. Some brought alcohol, but I told them they would need to leave that in their cars as I was not that crazy. Some were not too happy about that, but agreed as it was a free dinner for random strangers. So let me set the scene for you. I am out there with all calls routed to my cell phone and everyone just having a good time. We have a ton of people there just enjoying the fun night, chatting about random stuff, eating the food and occasionally lighting off some sparklers or throwing firecrackers into the stream. It's not stocked and only 1 foot deep. My VP, not the bad VP mind you, showed up with his family and brought some water balloons for the kids. And children. Around 8:30-ish, it's getting dark, and people want to shoot off more than the simple sparklers and firecrackers we had been using. The VP over the IT dept. Had everyone cross the footbridge, over county line, and off company property, mind you. And we set up a big wooden board using it as our launch pad. We fired off what we had for an hour or two, and sort of just hang out for a little while. At around this time, people were tired and ready to head home. I told people to take home leftovers within reason. We all clocked out at 8 and no one left until about 10:30. The bad VP did call once more while we were out back at the party. It was 7:50 and she called asking for a status update. My exact words were, "Well, you were the only one to call us today. The rest of us are on the back patio enjoying the 4th of July shindig." She simply acted like my boss and said, "As long as no alcohol or fireworks are on company property, I do not care." We ate roughly half of the food catered. The rest was taken home. A small group volunteered to stay behind to clean up, including my VP. We had a funny conversation about how this will make waves with the bosses, but he said he had my back and asked me how much this cost. I just gave him a sideways look, which made him laugh. Tuesday morning, I submitted the expense report to my VP. This email would inevitably make its way over to the bad VP and up the chain to the CIO of the company. It would be a bad idea to give out the exact cost of the party, mind you, but I can tell you that because of this 4th of July party, new rules were put into place. Any expenses of over 4K or more must be approved by the direct supervisor, VP over the department, and the full expense report must be sent to the financial department for review after the fact. Hint, the party cost over 6K. The BBQ was the most expensive part. I did not order from a low or mid-tier place. The place I ordered from has consistently been on the top 10 in the DFW listing for the last 30 years. I ate at that place so much I made friends with the owner. The best BBQ I have ever had. The pies and cakes were custom made by a bakery, and the cookies were made by a boutique cookie place. I had 10-12 packs of Coke, Coke Zero, DP, DP Zero, Pepsi, and Pepsi Zero. I bought 5 pepperonis, 5 sausages, 5 cheese, 2 Hawaiian, and 3 cheeseburger pizzas from one place, and nearly the same number from another place. Excluding the cheeseburger ones, I subbed out those for a different specialty pizza from the other place. The burgers were from an excellent burger place that did catering. I know that owner well. He brought his kids for the night of fun after he heard what was going to be happening. He was also the one who brought the brat dogs as he recently added those to his menu. This was the most expensive office party in the history of the company. The only things more expensive than this were some business meetings that the CEO rented private rooms in high-end restaurants for. As for the CEO, he was outraged. not at the cost of the party, mind you. He knew that the party would not have been necessary if people had been allowed to go home. He was outraged that IT was the only group required to work on that day. When I submitted the logs showing how we received no real phone calls, no service requests, and that we basically watched movies, played video games during our shift, he had heard enough. He apparently sent out a scathing email about work-life balance and the importance of our holidays to every upper management. It was kind of funny as people wanted me to get in trouble for what I did, but the reality is other departments have done similar things in the past, just not on the scale that IT did. The bad VP was admonished quite effectively and sent me an apology email. I forwarded it to the team with a strong hint to not reply. Then my VP let the CIO and the CEO know about what the bad VP said. You guys don't have lives. The bad VP did actually confirm she said it in a meeting with her EVP. It did not go over well. I have never heard people yelling in an office meeting like that before. The CEO of the company came to our office and yelled at her. Not sure if she was fired, but she is not at work today. In Active Directory, she does not have the down arrow of death, so not 100% what happened to her. I know she lost whatever clout she had at this company with her attitude. If anything more happens, I will update. But so far, it looks like the fallout from this is I caused a new rule to be put in place about how much you are allowed to spend at one time. The bad VP may or may not be let go, forced to resign. I know she got yelled at. Strangely, there is now no longer any pushback for my bid to get everyone back to working from home. Edit. Please stop asking me where the restaurants are. I'm not doxing myself. The compliance was epic, OP turning the unfair commands of the VP into a lavish celebration for her team. The compliance's fallout finally restored work-life balance in the office and also marked the beginning of the bad days of the VP. It was really an outstanding malicious compliance. Guys, very interesting Reddit story form. Gwen BD 94. Ordered to do maintenance on a grill without the right equipment, grill was broken trying anyways. Another fun story about my favorite supervisor from when I was in the Navy. A little bit of backstory to help explain some of the later facts. In the military, every piece of equipment gets preventative maintenance done on it to maintain it in good working condition. In the Navy, we have a very well laid out maintenance system with step-by-step instructions on how to do every bit of maintenance, with instructions so simple a monkey could do it. Part of these maintenance procedures lists required tools, parts, materials, and test equipment, and they are also extremely specific, detailing the length requirement of your screwdrivers, the brand of your gauges, etc. The management of this system the Navy uses is called the Maintenance and Material Management System, 3M, or Planned Maintenance System, PMS. As an electrician, we owned all electrical distribution equipment on board, and for jobs without an electrical training background, we also owned the actual equipment. So the electronics technicians, with electrical training, could maintain their own electrical equipment. But the cooks, culinary specialists, without an electrical background, relied on us to maintain their equipment for them. Now, if you've ever used a commercial flat-top grill, chartre griddle before, you know you set it to a specific temperature you want the cooktop heated to, and not a 09 dial like your stove at home. Part of maintaining the griddle was checking the calibration of this temperature setting once every year or two. I forget how often this check was, but it wasn't a frequent check. Relatively early on when I got on board the ship, young EMFN, junior electrician, Gwen BD 94, was assigned to do this maintenance check, so I gathered all of my tools, parts, materials, etc. In doing so, I couldn't find the proper temperature sensor for our calibrated temperature gauge. We had the round-tip ambient temperature probe for use in the ovens, but not the flat-tip surface temperature probe for use on a griddle. I asked a different supervisor to my favorite supervisor for help, and he couldn't find it either. So we ordered a new one, and he said he'd take care of the paperwork for the maintenance check. Being new and unfamiliar with the system, I let it go and never questioned when the maintenance check disappeared from the maintenance list the next week, meaning someone accomplished it, hint nudge nudge, and all was good. The next time this maintenance check came up due, we were on deployment, and it was again assigned to me. By this time, we had a new supervisor, and I was now EM3, slightly less junior electrician, Gwen BD 94. A bit more knowledgeable. I looked where we kept all our calibrated equipment and couldn't find the flat-top temperature probe I knew it needed, so I asked my supervisor. He found we had one on order, but didn't know that we had one in the shop, and told me to figure it out. Knowing that was an unlawful order and would amount to lying about the check, and could bite me in the ass later, I said I wouldn't do the maintenance without the right equipment, and since he couldn't lawfully order me to, we started putting a note on the check that the tools were on order and delaying it. This went on for about 2 to 3 months until the check was about to go red, move out of periodicity, and cause negative numbers on out maintenance reports. And I was again ordered to figure it out, or I'd be written up. I refused and raised the same issue to my boss's boss, and we tore the shop apart trying to find the right equipment, but couldn't find it, so he told me not to worry about it. Later that week, while I was on watch as a roving watchstander, allowed to walk around the ship and even required to, after dinner one evening, I saw a newer, more junior electrician. Let's call him EMFA Timmy, even more junior than I initially was electrician, in the galley kitchen working on the griddle. I took a step into the galley and asked him what he was doing, and lo and behold, he was doing the maintenance check. I asked him what temperature probe he was using, and he showed me the one for the oven. I explained to him the issue and told him if he signed the maintenance check, it would be gun decking, lying on official paperwork, and he could get in trouble, but let him make his own decisions as an adult. He decided to continue doing the check. I giggled and continued on with my watch. After my watch, it was nearly 10 p.m., so I went to bed for the night. About an hour later, I got woken up, being told my supervisor needed me in the galley. I signed, figuring it was about the check, and I was going to get that earlier threatened write-up. After getting dressed and making it to the galley, the entire electrical shop was in the galley troubleshooting the griddle. You see, EMFA Timmy got to the step in the PMS where it said to use a screwdriver to adjust a dial until the thermometer read the same temperature indicated by the set temperature. When he measured it, it was off by about 150 degrees, so he kept turning up the heat. Eventually, it was hot enough to melt the griddle's built-in overtemp protection device, instantly shutting the stovetop off. Turns out, he did need that temperature probe. I was tasked with helping come up with a solution to fix it, because the griddle was a critical piece of equipment for the cooks, and we had no replacement parts to fix it. I asked EMFer Timmy if he ever finished the last steps of the maintenance card, turning the grill off, putting it back together, reporting completion of the PMS. He told me he hadn't. I turned to my boss and said since the maintenance check I explicitly advised against doing without the proper tools was still ongoing, and I was informed I could do the maintenance or be written up, I'd stick with my original decision and refuse to do the maintenance. He could write me up in the morning during working hours, but in the meantime, I was going back to bed. Have a nice night. In the morning, I did indeed get written up, but for the insubordination, not for refusing the maintenance check, while my boss's boss looked on with the biggest shit-eating grin at me for holding my ground, and my supervisor was pissed at me. Turns out I was right and we couldn't do that maintenance check without the right equipment. This remains one of my write-ups I am least ashamed to have ever gotten, and I'd take it again in a heartbeat to give a giant "I told you so" middle finger to idiot middle managers. I later found an electronic record of the counselling chit my supervisor got for tasks people with doing maintenance without the proper equipment, because I laid out that this was a known issue, we didn't have the right probe for years, and threw his ass deep under the bus. Hated the guy. We got the right probe in about 6 months later. TLDR. I got told to do a job I couldn't do or get written up. I refused. Someone dumber got roped into doing it. Stuff broke. I got told to help fix it. I said I already accepted being written up for opting out of this experience and took the write-up. Instead of malicious compliance, it was more of a refusal to compliance. Whatever. It was perfect. OP's refusal to comply unlawful orders of his supervisor unleashed consequences for the supervisor and exposed his incompetence and mismanagement. The cherry on top was throwing the supervisor under the bus, ensuring he faced repercussions for neglecting proper procedures. OP played perfectly. Story from Shell Loser 42. Just let the kids sort it out themselves. Okay then. Backstory. I live in a town in the Netherlands with a university, and a few years ago, my GF's cousin got accepted as an overseas student. My GF is Japanese. Her family, father, mother, her sister, and herself, moved to the Netherlands while she was younger. Her cousin still lived in Japan when she applied, got accepted, and is now living in a student room in the Netherlands. We don't really have dorms here like in the US, but the building she lives in is maintained by the university itself. Said cousin is doing quite well for herself, got good grades, and is well on her way to get her diploma. Partly because of this, the overseas family decided to have their vacation in the Netherlands this year, both for leisure and a bit of a family gathering. This story takes place during the family gathering. My GF's parents and the cousin's parents, plus yet another family, had a meeting in a restaurant in my hometown. They had 2 little kids in tow, sisters. These looked like 8 or 9 or so to me, but my GF later told me that they are actually 11 and 12, but did look younger than they were, probably also because of their school uniform. At least that's what it looked like to me. I really don't know. Anyway, the idea was to catch up with the family, and my GF was asked if she would be willing to keep the 2 young kids busy for a few hours since she was the oldest of the lot. My GF and me are in our 40s. Her studying cousin is around 25, and as said, the 2 kids are around 10, 11 and 12. My GF didn't mind, but did ask me if I wanted to come along as well. Her cousin didn't mind. The 3 of us had met a few times before already. And, well, it was all about keeping the young kids busy anyway. Oh, for the record, the 2 young kids basically only speak Japanese. They do understand bits of English and can even speak some, but it's mostly Japanese. My GF's cousin speaks both Japanese and English and has even learned quite a bit of the Dutch language as well. Seriously, for the few years she's been here, it's IMO quite impressive. My GF speaks Japanese, English and Dutch, and as for me, Dutch, obviously, and English. But over the years, I also managed to pick up a decent bit of Japanese as well, and I can often, not always, understand the general gist of things, as long as it's not too quickly spoken or too complicated. So basically it was all English and Japanese between us. A bully shows up. We took the kids for a walk through my hometown, and they were quite interested, but when we went past a playground, that also quickly got their attention. So the 3 of us decided to go sit on a bench and let the kids have some fun. There were several activities like an air balloon castle, swings, a sandbox for younger kids to play in, just plenty of things to do. The 2 wanted to go into the castle, which was fine with my GF as long as they made sure to only use the entrance exit, which was located on our side so that they wouldn't get lost and we could keep track of them. The 3 of us talked quite a bit, but also kept eyes on the castle. So, around 15 or so minutes later, I spot the 2 again by accident near the exit, with a little kid in between them. I have no idea, but I'd say she was around 8 or so. I can't really tell exactly what's going on, but I did see the kid point to the area of the sandbox, and that's where the 3 of them headed next. Before I can say anything to my GF, a young lady walks up to us and asks, in Dutch, if we have seen a little girl passing by. This seems way too coincidental to me, so I ask, is she wearing a pink dress by any chance? The woman's face lights up as I tell her that she seems to be with my GF's younger cousins, and I point to the sandbox. But when we look over, we now also see an older boy near the girls. I'm not good with guessing ages, let's just say that he was bigger than them, and he's clearly harassing them. The small girl is visibly crying, but also comforted by one of the 2 younger cousins, while the other is keeping the boy away from her. We all walk over to the sandbox just when the boy manages to shove one of the cousins out of his way, and he's clearly trying to bully the young girl, in the pink dress, but now stopped by the other cousin. which is when we arrive. The woman who is with us berates the boy and tells him to stop picking on young children. But the little brat clearly isn't very impressed. The incident. Next moment, his mother, so I assume, storms over yelling, and she has every appearance of a Karen, or a Toki, as we tend to call them over here. A little argument ensues, mainly between the mother of the girl in the pink dress and our Karen Toki. It goes back and forth, but it's apparent that according to his mother, the brat did nothing wrong by picking on a girl half his own size, and this fine example of a mother even has the audacity to blame the other mother for raising such a weak little C-word. Basically, dat krijg je ervan als je domme huppel katjes opvoedt. And then the Karen says, kids will be kids, just let them sort out their own problems already. But she does take the boy with her as she walks away. The mother gets ready to grab her kid and leave, but in the meantime, the girl has completely calmed down and is actually having a great time with the two cousins. Unknown to anyone else yet at this time, my GF decides to comply with the earlier suggestion. First, she asks the mother to reconsider leaving because the kids are having so much fun together. My GF also comments how amazing kids are because they clearly don't speak the same language, yet they seem to understand each other just fine and are having a good time. The mother agrees, and my GF now addresses both her cousins in Japanese. And it sounded very serious to me, something about the tone, the way she talked, and also looked at both girls, even a bit sternly. They both nodded and clearly said, "Hi," aka, "Yes, ma'am." I think I even saw a small head bow, but I'm not too sure. Our little group goes to sit on a bench nearby, and for the next 5 minutes, nothing happens. We're just having some small talk. Then the bully returns. The mother of the small girl wanted to stand up but gets stopped by my GF, who tells her that she has nothing to worry about because her kid is completely safe. Just watch. Trust me on this. The mother is visibly uneasy, but does remain seated. Which is when I noticed that the behavior and stance of the two cousins has completely changed. They seem much more confident and relaxed. The boy starts making a fuss, while one of the cousins stands up, points to him, and yells something at him, in Japanese, obviously. He, once again, tries to shove her out of his way, but this time, she's faster. She steps aside, does something with her leg, and gives him a huge shove. Next moment, he's eating sand. No, literally. He gets up visibly angry while his face is covered in sand. This time he becomes violent and actually tries to hit one of the cousins with his fists. Tries. She evades one attempt, then grabs his hand, spins it around, and the next moment the boy finds his arm twisted behind his back and he starts screaming. The other cousin now also stands up, pats the young girl on her head, makes another move, and once again the boy gets shoved to the ground, this time by both cousins. Hard. When he looks up, the other cousin actually makes a moving gesture as if she wants to kick him, but without actually moving her legs or anything. She's obviously just threatening him. My GF pokes me with a huge grin on her face and tells me, "Surely that deserves a point for self-restraint, don't you agree?" She's visibly loving every moment of this. Apparently the boy isn't totally stupid, and he runs off, while one cousin immediately turns to the young girl again, who is clearly still having a good time, not at the least upset with the bully. "What was that in God's name?" the mother asks. "Oh, sorry. What the hell was that?" she asks. My GF tells the mother that her cousins are taking the same self-defense classes as she and her sister once did, and that she had decided to pull ranks by telling her cousins that it was okay for them to actually defend themselves, as long as they didn't overdo it, of course. The mother wanted to know more about these classes, but unfortunately for her, my GF had to tell her that the actual school was located all the way out in a suburb of Tokyo, so not something her daughter would be able to attend. Mommy returns with a boe, guard. We're chatting some more for the next 10 minutes, after which the bully's mother storms over to us with a boe in tow. Boe is Dutch for bewust ongeschickte Ambtenaar. Sorry, buitengewoon opsporingsambtenaar. which basically means so much as being a deputy but without the proper training nor having any weapons. Generally speaking, most of them usually handle ticketing people. He tells us that he has gotten a complaint from the woman about people beating up her kid, to which the mother of the young girl immediately snaps, "Whatever happened with letting the kids sort out their own problems?" Now, the funny thing is, apparently the whole spectacle didn't really go unnoticed, and before we could say or do anything, someone else had stormed over as well. "I saw the whole thing, officer." An older woman said, her brat, pointing at the Karen Toki, was harassing and beating the kid in the pink dress when those two awesome kids stepped in and protected her. Meanwhile, another man had walked over. "Officer, that brat got everything he deserved. He started it. The only thing that happened was that those girls defended themselves from him." The officer listened to everyone's statements and ended up deciding to ticket the mother of the brat. I assume for disturbing the peace, but I don't know any details because at this time we decided to leave and we went our separate ways. Aftermath. During our walk back to the hotel, share restaurant, the cousins told us the whole story. And I actually learned something new as well. While they were in the castle, they saw the boy harassing the young girl in the pink dress and immediately decided that this wasn't right, also because he was almost twice her size. He actually pulled on her hair while she was already crying, which made the cousins plain out angry. But the only thing they did was get the boy away from the girl. One cousin distracted the boy by blocking him from grabbing the girl's hair again, and she also started taunting him while the other comforted the young girl and led her to the exit, but the one we agreed on. So the girl's mother never saw her leave and got worried. The other cousin managed to lose the boy in the crowd, at first anyway, and she joined her sister near the exit. So I asked my GF why they didn't do all that stuff right away, to which she told me that they weren't allowed to. The first rule of self-defense is apparently, always leave if you can. And her cousins are at a level where the use of these techniques outside their school is strictly prohibited, unless there is an actual threat, of course, or if they've been given direct permission by an elder of the same school. A rule which my GF was stretching a little bit, but she told me that she would write up the whole altercation so that the cousins could take her letter back with them. She was actually not kidding when she talked about points for self-restraint, because that would actually be her advice in the letter. But yeah, typical hypocrite behavior. Let the kids sort it out until it suddenly doesn't go your way, eh? Thanks for reading. TLDR. My GF's overseas family, SOS Japanese, decided to have their vacation in the Netherlands this year. They also organised a family gathering. During said gathering, my GF was asked to look after two of her younger cousins, age 11 and 12, and to keep them busy for a few hours. She was fine with that. Her student cousin, who was studying at a local university, tagged along, and I also got invited. First, we checked out my hometown, but when we passed a playground, the teenage cousins really wanted to play there, so we let them. During their play, they came across an older boy who was harassing a young girl. He was easily twice her size, and the cousins did not appreciate this. They took it on themselves to get the young girl out of the balloon castle they were in. My guess would be that she was 8 or 9 years old or so. The boy followed them into the sandbox. A little altercation happened between the bully's mother and the mother of the young girl. The Karen in this story basically told us off. It was perfectly fine what her son did. Just let kids sort out their own problems already. Which my GF, unknown to us, took to heart, and she complied to that by telling her cousins that if the boy would harass them again, then they were free to actually defend themselves. Said boy did return, tried to shove one of the cousins out of his way, and ended up with his arm twisted behind his back and getting thrown hard into the sand by both cousins, who somewhat implied that they were only getting started. He took off. The boy's mum later returned with a BOA, Sharon, an official police assistant. But several bystanders who had also seen the incident quickly told the officer what happened and spoke up against the bully. Mom of the Year ended up with a fine, but I don't know any further details. Thanks again for reading. Hope you enjoyed. Edit. Thanks you guys for all the warm feedback and comments. Yes, even you critics who shared some critical comments, because IMO, that is what Reddit is all about. Reason for my thank you vent is because this is the first time since the new awards that I got one for myself. I think still need to look into expiration and such. Unimportant, I am very much moved with all the feedback, updos, and now. Even an award? Thanks you guys, you're awesome! Yes, even you critics. No, I'm not joking. Without people telling me no TLDR, I would never have thought of that, and so, it got added. The malicious compliance was truly flawless. The Karen thought his son would beat OP girlfriend cousins, but they proved themselves to be expert at defending them. The fine to the Karen for letting the children fight in the public place brought a real touch of poetic justice. Story from Eddie Baby Abel. So 35 people walk into a pub. Sadly, this isn't a setup for a joke. TLDR at the end. So this happened a couple of years back in a pub I was working at. I worked the bar at this pub, which was pretty popular, especially on sunny days, as we had a lot of outdoor seating and a pretty huge beer garden. Now, the story takes place one exceptionally hot summer Sunday. For those of you who have the joy of not being all that familiar with our tea and crumpet society, I'll enlighten you as to why this is a pain for working in a pub. Firstly, the moment the sun blesses our sodden grey land with its presence, we British come out of our thatched caves to bask in its glow, like the lizard people our royal family is. This subsequently also means everyone had the exact same though of let's go have a pint at the pub and sit in the sun. Yay for bartending. The other noteworthy point here is that on Sunday, a roast is had. Beef, lamb, chicken or pork with roasted potatoes, veggies, gravy and Yorkshire puddings. All of which is wonderful unless you have to spend 2 hours cooking it. With that out of the way, this particular Sunday, we were full, and I mean full. Bar 4 or 5 people deep, the 100 plus tables all double booked for turnover, and I found myself without a moment's respite between pouring drinks and telling people we were fully booked. During this manic rush, I spot a bit of a commotion outside and see a group of roughly 30-35 people, including screaming kids, walking through the courtyard, ignoring everyone, and into the beer garden. Once my colleague and I had thinned down the numbers at the bar substantially, I told him I was going to walk past to see what the huge group was doing. Anyone that's worked with real-life people, of course, know that people suck, hence why I just wanted to walk past and avoid interaction. Also, it's a pet peeve of mine when people just sit themselves down, ignoring all the staff, and expecting us to accommodate them without even the courtesy of mentioning to someone that they're here. So I take a step past the threshold of the bar, always dangerous, and that day a choice I regretted, and walk through the beer garden collecting empty glasses as I go. As I near the area, the group has settled in. As far away from the building as possible, I might add, I avoid eye contact at all costs. You're not going to come say hi, then I can't see you. Walking past the group, I am spotted by a very angry woman, the alpha Karen if you will, snapping her fingers at me to try and get my attention as I tried to get away. She stormed up to me and stared me dead in the face. Excuse me? We've been waiting here for the last 15 minutes and no one has come to give us menus. What the hell are you all doing? I'll admit I was momentarily in shock as the group had to walk through the courtyard and must have seen the crowds of people and stressed waiters everywhere. I'm sorry, madam, but I had no idea you were here. Did you speak with anyone to let us know? Then what I saw was a rage build just below her plasticized skin. Yes, I spoke with the redhead. No one that worked there was a redhead. Well, anyway, I want some menus, we're starving. I looked past her and asked how many they were. We're 36 people. That's not a problem, is it? She said, without so much as a hint of understanding why this was ridiculous. Well, yes, actually, that's quite a lot for a walk-in. And as you probably saw on your way in, we're extremely busy. I'm afraid we have no tables available, and we don't serve food in the beer garden. You'll have to try your luck at getting a table in the courtyard. But I can't imagine you'll be able to find enough seating for the 36 of you, and I simply can't hold tables for you turning other guests away. The reality is that I could, but simply didn't want to. She stared at me for a moment, then said, "You don't serve food in the beer garden," or "You won't serve me food in the beer garden." "No, madam, the establishment does not serve food in the beer garden." Ugh, fine. "Look, can we just have chips then? For the kids? They're starving." I thought about it for a moment, deciding if I was really willing to put up with this, or if I should just say no and send them on their way. Against my better judgment, I said, "Okay," but they would have to sit in the courtyard once the tables were available and asked roughly how many portions of chips they would be wanting. She replied, "6," and I said, "That's probably fine, but she'll have to go inside to order." This did not sit well with her, and she started to get very cross. On my way back in, I swung by the kitchen to let them know what's up and to expect 6 chip orders, but not to rush them because the woman was an enormous pain. I get back to the bar and it's busy again, 3-4 people deep, so I immediately jump in and start pouring pints. A few minutes later I hear, "Oh, for God's sake, this is ridiculous," and immediately know who it is. This tiny, angry woman pushes her way through the crowd and snaps her fingers at me to get my attention. "You, I want to order my chips, and hurry it up, the kids are hungry." "Okay, I'll put them on now. 6 portions, correct?" "No, 17. Sufficient to say I was bewildered. "Madam, that's not what we discussed. I'll have to see if the kitchen can even do that. We're very busy." "We'll go on then. Run along to the kitchen," she barked. As I was about to, I hear, "Actually, can you make it 35? "Madam, I'll be honest with you. There's no way you'll get them all at once. It's simply too many for the fryer. It'll have to be in batches, and it's going to take a while as there are more pressing orders ahead of you. You will also need to pay up front." "I don't care. Bring them one by one if you have to. As soon as one is ready, bring it out." Bingo. I went and spoke to the chef explaining what was going on. Rude woman, many chips, one by one. He laughed, and we decided to do exactly as she asked. Bring on the MC. So despite being very, very busy, as soon as one portion of chips was ready, I took it out. One portion, only one. She was not pleased. "What the hell is this? I said 35 portions, not one." As I explained to you inside, Madam 35 portions is simply far too many for our fryers to handle, and there is a substantial number of other orders ahead of you. I had to try very hard to hide my shit-eating grin at this point. But, what the hell do you expect me to do with this? Perhaps you could have 1 chip each per portion. And I swiftly turned and walked away. Following this, every 10-15 minutes, I would take out one more and only one more portion of chips. The group. By about portion 12, they had been there several hours and were fed up. They tried to complain to the manager, but she was so rude and disrespectful to myself, my manager, and other staff members, that he dismissed her, stating that I had explained clearly to her that we were very busy, and she herself, and told me to bring them out one portion at a time, if need be. They left very angry, and we had 23 portions of chips paid for, that staff got to enjoy later on. TLDR. Very rude woman with group of 35 expects us to feed them on a very hot busy Sunday when the pub is overflowing. Asks for 6, then 17, then 35 portions of chips. They come out one portion every 15 minutes until they eventually leave, and we get to eat the 23 portions of chips they didn't wait for. Edit. Spelling. Also, a few people have mentioned they feel bad for the rest of the group. Well, I didn't mention it because it wasn't really relevant to the MC, but they were all pretty rude and finger-snappy. For anyone worried about the starving kids, they got the first bowl of chips, covered most of the table in ketchup, smashed 3 or 4 chips into the table, and left at least a 1/3 of the chips. I don't think they were as close to death as Alpha Karen tried to preach. Also, thanks for the awards, everyone. Story from Dulcis Ultio. Boss wants to call it quits. So I give them what they asked for. I started working for someone who had courted me, asked me to come work for them, for 6 months. Agreed to salary request, company car, the whole 9. Thoroughly looking forward to the job since this was a former client, knew the person quite well, decent sort, etc. Work starts, all is good, I'm learning their trade and craft and providing my input and expertise. Unbeknownst to me at the time, things are tight financially for them, like really tight. Nearing the end of the month, get called in and am told I'm not dedicated enough to the job. Like WTF, I don't take breaks at all. I'm always early, constantly telling them I'm happy to work overtime, weekends, etc. Would love the OT. But I'm not dedicated enough? What? Lots of back and forth, me defending myself, not entirely certain why, and getting seriously pissed because I work like a man possessed. Then hits me with, we think we should call it quits. Huh? I don't understand. Go over the things I'm learning, stuff I've done. Nope, all that stuff is perfect, more than happy with the input, etc. Anyway, let's get back to work. They drop the entire debacle like a hot potato and I'm left speechless and in a bit of shock. Oh well, brush it off and continue, albeit more aware of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and making sure to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. End of second month is coming, all is looking rosy, work is going good, we seem busy, I'm constantly busy, no real time to hang around and shoot the breeze, and then boom, into another meeting, same shit again. Seriously, WTF? This time though, get told I'm too expensive and costing them X amount per month to have me there. I go a little overboard and defend my position stating they sought me out. Not the other way around. I had a decent job before, same package, and although it wasn't ideal, it was paying the bills and I would have stayed there for years otherwise. Now you hit me with this shit, like, seriously, WTF? And then I get hit with that same BS of we think we should call it quits. Same as before, call the meeting to an end swiftly after, when I start saying things like, well, fire me then. To be clear, nothing wrong with work performance, they say as much yet again. Just the overall commitment isn't there. Well now, that's the second time. The second time you've told me that you want to call it quits. In my head do that to me again. Tell me you want to call it quits. Just one more time. Third month. Things are not looking as good as month 2. Business is a little quieter. Boss has had flu and been a bear for most of the month. I've tried to stay out of their way on purpose, but making sure not to slack off and making sure I'm constantly busy. All good, I'm thinking. Well, not so fast, Dulcis. End of the month is coming. And, wouldn't you know it, I get called in again, FFS man. Can't I catch a goddamned break here? Anyway, play it totally cool and calm. Ask where I'm going wrong, what else should I be doing, etc. Nope, just the overall commitment. Keep in mind, at this point, my work ethic has not changed. My actual work is top-notch, and there really is nothing to complain about. Although I had been off sick 2 days in the month and something else happened that caused me to be off work, but totally legit and with the blessing off boss. Help, those are now held over my head. Off too many days. End the meeting, go home after seeing a doc for my ailment, and return the following day. Call boss for meeting to clarify the main issue as boss. Still has not explained or told me what they mean by commitment not fully there. Boss states, you don't come in to work on weekends or holidays. You could have blown me over with aerogel. What in the actual f***? I explained to boss that they stated at the beginning of my employment that we would not be working weekends and holidays. Hell, even my goddamned contract says as much, and that if there is work to be done on weekends and holidays, that there will be time off and payment for it. If. I also explained that they said they were totally okay with me being off ill and for the other issue. Nope, we should call it quits. Boss because boss is pissed, upset, throwing a tantrum. I don't know. Need boss to advise on particular part of a rather important, rather expensive step in the process of the job I'm currently working on, but nope, I'm ghosted. Stick around for 2 hours because I'd like to finish this before I tell boss. I'm complying with their request, but nada. Boss isn't answering calls or messages, so I bounce. Off to home. Remember how I said earlier that the third time would be the last? Well, boss calls a while later. acts as if there is nothing amiss. WTF. Get into it again over the phone. Tell boss I'm taking them up on their offer. What offer? You know, the one where you said to call it quits. No, don't do anything rash. Think about it overnight and we'll talk in the morning. Yeah, right. Well, I thought it over. And I thought, I'd much rather not be treated like scum, and I'll take my shit and You bit off more than you could chew, and now I'm to blame? Get to work next morning. Ask boss if they want to talk in private or in general work area. Nope, we can talk in general area. Okay, well, I've thought about it and I think it best that I do take you up on your offer. Just pay me out to the end of the month and we're good. If not, well, I have recourse. No, all good, I'll pay you out. Took my and right off. Left boss to deal with the rather important, rather expensive and very time-sensitive job I was busy with. Guaranteed to cost a good few thousand to get an extension if the job isn't lost altogether. TLDR. Boss courted me for months, couldn't afford me, blamed me, told me once too many times that we should call it quits. So I took him up on it. Side note, I'm starting up my business again, so it's no biggie to have left the job. It'll be up and running in time to pay bills and such next month. Also, I'm being purposely vague so as to retain a modicum of anonymity. Edit. Boss is screwed. Me leaving means boss has to do all the work themselves. The whole reason I was hired in the first place is because boss couldn't keep up with the workload. We would have been in profit by the end of next month. I was catching up the backlog. Sorry if I didn't clarify that part. Eat it too. Thank you very much to every single person who commented below. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the support from those who provided it and for the kind words. Also thanks to those who pointed out where I erred as far as the disclaimer goes. I only put it in because I thought it was the done thing, as I'd seen it elsewhere before. But I do appreciate your comments. Negative feedback isn't bad, it helps me to grow, and that's my takeaway from it. Just to clarify a few things, boss is very competent as far as the work goes. Boss was in a tough spot as they were doing all the work themselves and needed someone else to help lighten the load. However, I don't think boss took into account just how expensive it is to hire someone who has the knowledge and expertise, and also expected that knowledge and expertise to magically transform the influx of money overnight. In all other areas, boss was fantastic, very supportive, freely shared knowledge, etc. But because of the cost and not realizing the benefit of having me grow within the business, boss took those frustrations out on me. Unfair? Yes. I would have stayed on and powered through the negativity were it not for the fact that boss kept repeating we should call it quits whenever they had to think about paying bills and paying me. I still think boss is a fantastic person and I would love to do work for boss in future, but it would be on a contractual basis only. I phoned boss yesterday and explained as much, and boss indicated that they would contact me next week. Boss needs to get over my leaving, and that's fair. But our prior relationship seems solid. Boss will become a client again and maintain our previous relationship with the added benefit of boss being able to call on me for the other work I was doing, as well as the work I was doing for them before being hired. And I get to benefit from the rates I charge, which means that I will make more per hour than when I was an employee. Sucked. Thanks, everyone. To the person who reached out, worried that I might be in a bad place. Thank you. Sincerely. I'm totally okay, but it's really heartwarming to know that there are kind folks like you out there that care so much. Much love to you. The malicious compliance was executed flawlessly and to the next level, taking the boss's repeated call it quits suggestion, literally making the boss play double what he was paying before. Such ungrateful people deserve such compliances. It is kid of best sweet revenge.